Welcome to the third video in the 10 Reasons You Need Fusion series. In this video, we'll be looking at polylines and masks, something you'll be using on pretty much every job you do. Fusion has exceptional control over mask creation and animation, which is essential for fast and accurate production. At the heart of this are polylines, which appear whenever a control is animated with a path or when a tool's effect is masked with a polygon or mask. Let's take a look at this in a bit more detail.
So I have a polyline here up on the screen which I've already created, and I can make various adjustments to this either by grabbing the individual points or by grabbing whole groups of points and moving those around. I can also work on individual points in terms of the way they are displayed. So this point here is curving between the points on either side. Over here on the icons I can change that to say linear mode, so I can work in either linear or curve mode. I also have the handles on each of the points which I can adjust as well for even greater accuracy. And those handles can be broken, so I can just adjust the right hand handle, adjust them both together, or break the left hand handle and adjust that. So lots of flexibility. Over here you can see the icons for all the options available to you. If you're not happy with icons or just unfamiliar with them at first, you can switch the button style to icons and text labels, or you can use text labels only, which is how I prefer to work. The other thing I can do is switch the mode of creation, so I can go to the polyline here and say, instead of working Beziers, I can switch to B-spline. So if you're happier working in B-spline, or you're more used to working that way, or even if the job just demands it, you can manipulate the polyline in exactly the same way. And if I want to switch back to Beziers, that also is no problem. While I've been making these adjustments, I've also effectively been animating this by setting up a second keyframe. And here you can see the result of that animation. I can set up a keyframe anywhere I want on the timeline, change the points, and then play back the result. It immediately updates. So, lots of flexibility, great options in terms of working either Bezier or B-spline, and an ideal tool for mask creation and rotoscoping. So let's see a worked example of this using polylines. I've got a shot of a razor blade here on a white background, and I want to place it over something with a bit more texture and interest. I've mixed it back to white a little so that it isn't too overpowering. Going back to the razor blade, I've already done a polyline around the edge to define that. I've also created a second polyline for the center, and the great thing about this is that as you are combining these two polylines, you can do so in a number of different ways. Over here I've subtracted one from the other, but there is a whole raft of different options available depending on what you need to do. So we'll combine that over the background, and there we have the razor blade. If I just zoom into the center and go back to the center polyline, again I've got great control since I can adjust things like the border width, which allows me to expand or contract the shape, which is very useful. So I can effectively eat into the razor blade. I can also adjust the soft edge, so if it's very sharp I can soften that off, etc. Going back to the main image now, what I've also done is use exactly the same polyline which I've copied in order to create a drop shadow. And there's my finished composite. Another useful feature within polylines is the use of double polylines. So as an example of that, if I wanted to cut out the feet on this shot and then composite them over the background that I used before, again I've just knocked it back a bit with white, so comping one over the other, you can see the polyline that I've used here. But part of the problem, of course, is that I'm getting quite a hard edge here where it should be nice and soft. If I go to the polyline, one of the things I can do is zoom into that particular section, just grab those points and switch to double polyline. Now I can control that by saying, do I want them to follow the inner polyline or not? I don't in this particular case. So I can just grab the points and resize that inwards, giving me a nice soft edge into the background without affecting the rest of the feet. I can still go back and create a soft edge to the rest of the shot, but ultimately I have fantastic control over all my mask creation here. Another aspect worth looking at, and a common problem in most compositing software, is that of pre and post masking. So if I wanted to apply a glow to this egg, for example, with a polyline around the egg itself to define the area I want affected, what happens here is that as I'm adjusting the glow, it's applying the effect first and then the mask, which doesn't give me the result I'm looking for. I want the egg to glow outside the mask. That normally can be quite a tricky thing to pull off, but Fusion makes it dead simple by allowing you to just switch the inputs from one to another, and then I've got exactly the effect I need. Of course, one of the primary uses of polylines is for rotoscoping and garbage matting, something like this with a blue screen that needs the puppeteers and background removed. Initially, I want to composite this over a blue background and just keep the essential elements to focus on when I set up the key. So what I've done is use polylines to set up an animated garbage mat around the leaf. If we turn on the polyline itself, you can see it animating through the various keyframes that I've set up. It's incredibly easy to build something like this and adjust, all very intuitive. So if I just zoom in a little on the leaf itself and go to a specific frame, every single point can be animated. So if I just adjust this part here, exaggerating it slightly to make the point, I can now go back through that point and see that it's automatically updated. Once again, I'll just play that back and see what that looks like. If I'm happy with what I've produced, I can just key that over the blue background, or indeed move straight on to the next stage by keying it directly over the final background in order to produce the final shot. So an ideal tool here for rotoscoping and garbage mat creation. And it's not just in polylines that you have excellent control. Everywhere you go in Fusion, you have perfect control over all the attributes. As an example, if we take a shot like this from the movie Final Destination and look at the background plate, these are the reflections of the logs falling off the lorry, which are CG matte and masters rather than polylines this time. This is what that looks like composited. These are the logs themselves, and this is the composite for that element keyed over the previous one. Finally, on this shot, what I'm in the process of doing is adding a camera shake in at the end when the logs hit the ground. At the moment, the camera shake comes in a little bit early, so I need to retime it. We want it to happen round about here at this frame. If I go to my timeline, I can see that the animation is slightly out, so all I have to do is grab all the keyframes and just move them up the timeline. Playing it back now, it looks a lot more in sync with the action, so you already get an idea of how quick it was to do that. The other thing I can do is adjust the spline graph of the camera shake itself and manipulate it in lots of different ways. I can change a couple of the points and change them from, say, linear to curved. Or I can grab all the points and reverse them. I can loop them and then play that result back. And I can also change it to a ping pong. Or, if I want to, I can retime the whole thing by stretching it out a bit and making the effect last a bit longer. Finally, I can box select the points and alter the entire shape of the graph to suit my particular needs. So as I said earlier, not just polyline and masks, but wherever you go in Fusion, you've got amazing control over virtually every aspect.
Hopefully you will agree from what I've just shown you that Fusion has a superb polylines and mask capability. Choices of B-splines, Bezier, or the manipulation of any shape with double polylines make it easier to create masks for the most complicated shapes imaginable. Plus, pre and post matting gets you the result you want fast. Then there are the extensive animation capabilities with a toolset to control every aspect of your spline animation, pretty much up there with most leading 3D software. In the next video, we'll be going through colour correction and colour science. Meanwhile, don't forget to take a closer look at our website at www.ionline.com, plus the Ion YouTube channel, where you can find a whole host of news, events and information that will show you why Ion Software is a world leader in compositing.